Towards the end of the book, we see a staging between Gandhi and Ambedkar, and that uh, is prefaced by Ambedkar's, and you can see a portrait of Ambedkar here, and he talks about the idea of social justice and equality, that a lot of people say that we exaggerate allegations of Hindu injustice, oppression and tyranny. The doctor who treated the untouchable women, for instance, felt no qualms of conscience in setting aside the code of conduct which is binding on his profession. The Hindu would prefer to be inhuman rather than touch and untouchable. In Baroda, I found that a person who is untouchable to a Hindu is also untouchable to a Parsi, and that's what the second section of the book, and we can pay attention to it a bit and see that what he faced in Baroda, where he did not find a housing. So as I was saying that he was in because he was with Parsis, and they are not in the folds of Hinduism, that they should not participate in the oppression of the Dalits. But you realize that yes, that's not what happened. That Bhim, who was back from Colombia, and you can see with his bags and everything, he's come to Baroda and he tries to find a house. No one is ready to give him shelter, and he meets someone on the train itself who, when he tells him that I was at Columbia in America and Professor Dewey was one of my teachers, that you must be bright boy, and you should be this thing. And he says that that when he was in America, he did not feel any of the caste hierarchies or any of exploitation based on the idea of caste itself. Once he's back in India, then he has to face it. And he also outlines something along with it. It's not only that he has to face discrimination, it's also the loneliness of it that is highlighted in Bhim's account. He says that the other person says, so you will stay with your friends here in Baroda. Then he says, an untouchable has no friends among other castes. If I claim a friendship and rejected, it will be embarrassing and painful on both sides. So he says that like he does not have friends. He cannot think of allies across caste. He probably has to stay within his caste is whatever has to be done. And then he, with much difficulty, he finds a place to stay. He fakes his identity and he says that that he will just stay and he will not make any nuisance, and he stays there. But soon people find out that he is not exactly a Parsi. A group of Parsis 4 days later with sticks and march up. Hey, who are you? Why did you come here? How dare you take a Parsi name? You filthy scoundrel have polluted the Parsi inn. So the idea of pollution, what is being underlined, as we saw first with the Hindu population, then with the Muslim population, and then the Parsis, is repeatedly tells us that the idea of pollution pervades every demography, and all of them practice in some way or the other this casteist behavior. And he says that that I had to pack up and go, and he's hurled a lot of abuses that like I implore, please let me stay a week at least. I have applied to the minister for a house, but these people are like adamant. Listen, you dirty Hindu dog, if you find you in this room this evening, your family won't even find any remains to weep over. We'll check the place at 6 o'clock. What you get to see is that even when a educated person like Ambedkar, who has come back from abroad and is working with the king of Baroda, so that must give him some privilege. That must give him some special status in the in that society itself, in the city of Baroda. But it does not. What transpires is that he is actually thrown out. He is in a very vulnerable state, a precarious state. So, the vulnerability of being a Dalit, the vulnerability of being from a lower caste, is expressed here in these panels, as you can see, and they come with uh, axis, and their hands turn into axis. The axis also are pointed, finger pointing ones. So constantly you will have fingers being pointed, and this is a repeated motif that is there across the narrative itself, where axes turn into fingers, or the fingers are only shown to represent the axis in that sense. So we are talking about physical, psychological violence and shame that is being imposed, and that's constantly a part of a Dalit's life. The idea of shaming them, and then you can see water droplets coming from here. You will have, and the eye is there, and so the kind of precarity that is there, that like, oh, please kill me almost. If I lie now, I should be killed. My shelter or my life, which one do I fight for? The kind of precarity that he's talking about, and that precarity is there from the beginning itself, that is being outlined. If you look at it, he's constantly talking about water, talking about shelter, talking about travel, the motives that basically make the world itself, right? That how do I live? I don't have shelter over my head. People are not ready to give me a place to stay. And even to a person like Ambedkar, so then we can think about people who are less privileged than Baba Sahib would have been treated far worse. That's what we can assume from his treatment in Baroda. So then he goes on to knock a few friends' says door, and you can see what happens as a result, and we can see, and what we are talking about in terms of loneliness of life and the precarity of it. So he goes and asks, I know no untouchable families in Baroda. My Hindu and Christian friends may be able to help. So then he goes and asks, Jai, is there any way I could stay with you till I find state bungalow? You are a dear friend Bhimrao. I am sad and angry at these Parsis who treated you badly. You are welcome to stay with me. I just want to say one thing though. If you come, my servants will go. So you can always see the kind of hierarchy that is built, where the Dalit seems to be at the lowest of the low. Even animals are better than them. So, and then Bhimrao obviously understands the entire this thing, and you can look at the panel itself, the panel that is coming, and the arrows that are coming out of the mouth of people. That the arrows, the words are stinging. The words are like arrows, like the kind of words that are being thrown at a friend. You can see that like they are like arrows. So Bhimrao obviously leaves, and he says that like there's no space here, there's no roof. Where does he go? And then you see that he knocks at another friend's house, but and he's also turned over there. So Ambedkar decides to wait it out in Kamathi Bagh, in a public garden itself. So he sits in a public garden, and you will see again something that the Gond art does wonderfully. The public garden itself takes the face of Ambedkar, and in that lonely, vulnerable moment, he thinks, I wonder what my parents would have thought of all this. I came here with such high hopes. I was going to prove so much to the world. I turned down many well-paid jobs to repay my debt to the Maharaja, and here I am sitting at a bench in a public park itself. So the narrative constantly reiterates and sets up these narratives of discrimination, and one such act is the Mahad Satyagraha, which again goes back to the incident of water, the fish and water itself. You will see again, to focus on uh, uh, the Gond art itself. So where Mahad Satyagraha had happened, where you see Ambedkar speaking, and the entire thing turning into sprinklers, water sprinklers, that the Dalits have right to water. So we are going to the tank to assert that we too are human beings like others. It must be clear in this meeting that nothing has been set up the norms of equality. So constantly this emphasis on equality, the idea of water uh, as a primary site of Dalit struggle and solidarity, as you can see. And we are told the Mahad Satyagraha was a long drawn struggle. In 1923, Bombay Legislative Council had decreed that untouchables should be allowed to use all public water bodies, wells, roads, and schools built and run by public fund, but with the local Hindus led by Brahmins clung viciously to the traditional privileges. Think about it, it took 4 years of preparation and peaceful protest before Ambedkar could lead 3,000 Dalits to Chavadar tank to drink a few sips of water. No wonder the Dalit movement calls this the Declaration of Independence. And then the person also tells, the other person, part of the discussion, tells us how come we don't read about it all in our history books. And that's what the last part of the book highlights to us, and highlighting that how Ambedkar has been kind of silenced in our history itself. And that's what the discussion is. If if you take social justice and equality seriously in our country today, it is thanks to Ambedkar. The other person is like, and you can see the gap in our historical understanding, that the other person does not believe it too. You are exaggerating. Next you will see that next you will see say that Ambedkar was more serious about equality than Gandhi. So you can see that that Ambedkar has not found his rightful place in Indian history itself. Therefore, the necessity of such a book also, the pedagogical impulse that I was talking about. The person defending Ambedkar, and on the side of Ambedkar, as you can see with the birds that are there, and like the speech bubbles represent, and then also this person who's not so much favorable towards Ambedkar being represented by a tail, the scorpion's tail itself. So I would say that without hesitation, Ambedkar campaigned for a just society all his life, from the time he launched the anti-caste newspaper in 1920 through the years he spent studying at London School of Economics and qualifying at Gray's Inn to be a lawyer. Through the years that he spent practicing law at Bombay High Court, he wanted to be untouchable caste to be politicized, to fight for their rights, not to have to rely on on the kindness and good intention of upper caste Hindus. He launched organizations to raise political awareness and to build schools and libraries for most marginalized castes. Gandhi had different priorities. So we see a last trope that I want to talk about between Gandhi versus Ambedkar. So one then starts to see that Gandhi had different priorities. He was more concerned with India's freedom from British rule rather than the transformation of Hindu society, which is what was the aim of the transformation of Hindu society, was the aim of Ambedkar itself. So that's what Ambedkar's, and then we have this huge figure where we are told about Ambedkar, and you can see so many Dalits coming together, that like my final words are words of advice to you are educate, organize and agitate, have faith in yourself. And you can see an image of a Dalit studying, and you can see one hand and the person inside it, and then so many hands and fingers. When Ambedkar was on the point of convincing British government that untouchable people should have separate electorate, Gandhi actually stepped in to derail the process. We are told about this part of our this part of the history, and which sets up that how Gandhi was focused more on the larger goal of fighting the British and gaining independence, rather than thinking about transforming the Hindu society. And that sets up a binary between Ambedkar and Gandhi, and we are informed about 1931 September, where Ambedkar writes this letter that the following are the terms and conditions on which depressed classes will consent to to place themselves under the majority rule in a self-governing India. What are the claims that what are the demands he is making to the minorities committee at the Indian Round Table Conference? Equal citizenship, free enjoyment of equal rights, protection against discrimination, adequate representation in legislatures, adequate representation in services, adequate representation in cabinet, and redress against prejudicial action. And Ambedkar's we have speech bubble. I have no doubt, I have not the slightest doubt, if untouchables of India were given the chance of electing their representative to this conference, I would find a place there. I say therefore, I fully represent the claims of my community. Let no man be under any mistake that the impression as regards that. So we see the emergence in this last section of the book, which is not drawn on waiting for a visa. This is drawn from the Gandhi Ambedkar kind of binary that is also still there in our political world even today. This is about Ambedkar's emergence as the spokesperson for the Dalits, that he should have a place in the round table. And we are told about the Pune Pact itself. So and then we are told about how Gandhi kind of manipulated within quotes the entire attempt to have a separate electorate, we see Ambedkar and Gandhi. Gandhi here is with an axe here and trying to probably cut the tree that symbolizes Dalit resurgence. I claim myself, my own person, to represent the vast mass of untouchables. I claim that I would get, if there was a referendum of the untouchables, their vote, and that I would top the poll. And then we are told about the letter. The letter is there to Samuel where Gandhi says that the untouchables are not well organized, so they should not have a separate electorate. Along with it, we have the Constitution of India here, so which kind of exposes the hypocrisy of the political class itself and the kind of discrimination that Dalits have faced when it comes to institutions, state and government. So we are constantly reminded Ambedkar's contribution to modern India. We are reminded that like how he was his first draft of Hindu Code Bill tried to make Hindu personal law more equitable, and then we are also told what his entire efforts meant and how he moved away from Hinduism, finding its discriminatory practices disagreeable, and he wanted a more just form of religion to practice, and that leads to him converting to Buddhism, and then that's why we see that the entire panel here, as you can see, Indian society is a gradation of castes and forming in itself. What is the village but a sink of localism, den of ignorance, narrow-mindedness and communalism? I'm glad the constitution has discarded the village and adopted the individual as its unit. Buddhism he's talking about is based on reason, and there is an element of flexibility in it not found in other religions. So it was not my fault that I was born as an untouchable, but I'm determined not to die a Hindu. So that's why he will convert to Buddhism, and we are told about that conversion itself, and there you will see entire page that is dedicated to Buddha and his contribution. You can this is representing a wordless page which talks about his conversion to Buddhism itself. So thereby what the narrative does is to bring us an entire biography of Ambedkar himself from his childhood days till his conversion and to Buddhism, and his participation in the Indian political life, his major disagreements with Gandhi and the Indian political class itself, and the larger Hindu society itself for its discriminatory practices towards the Dalits.